So I got about half an hour to kill, and I thought, what better way than get something off my chest that I've been thinking about quite a lot. So I've been in this play now for January 2021. First share I bought was GME. I heard on the radio or somebody walking past, I can't quite remember, but I heard somebody or heard it said it was 140% short. And because I knew what I knew about 2008 and the VW squeeze, before I even got home out of the car, I bought the first share and then very quickly done some digging and DD, and rest is history, as they say. So throughout this play, we've all obviously had the FUD and stuff, and we've had the worriers and the doubters and the it will never change, it will never stop, nothing will ever happen. And I wrote something that weren't picked up on. That's fine, because thousands, millions of people haven't got a voice, haven't had what they've said, which was correct, but didn't get picked up on, and other people have said the same thing, great minds think alike, etc. But why hasn't it squeezed yet? So for the most part, people tend to concentrate on the rules, market exempts. They concentrate on the failure of the regulators, the power that some of these hedge funds hold, these market makers. Go and look at Dave Lauer. It just reminds me, go and have a look at Dave Lauer's post regarding Citadel. And from what I understand, shouldn't have market maker exempts. So they'll be scrambling to cover if the regulators enforce it. So it's always been that we've come at it from the rules, and it's always been that there's been doubts, you know, because it's always gone on. I flagged up just now, I flagged it up previously, flagged it up with Boss Blunt, has talked about it, the 1901 squeeze. And there's others, Piggly Wiggly, and there's quite a few. So if you spend 10 minutes, just Google it, you'll find there's been lots of squeezes. VW for us was always held up because it was probably the most recent, and then we have HKD, which might not fall into quite the same category, but it's interesting that a stock on an IPO opens at $7.50 and runs up to $2,555 a share. That took 2 weeks. So whenever we've looked here, or whenever the community and everything that goes with that, the FUD, the interns, the bots, the haters, bag holders elsewhere, crypto enthusiasts, purists, whatever, we all know what goes on. We've always tended to come at what will stop it, what will they do, what strokes will they pull, will it be another buy button removal or worse? You know, we know now the DTCC, you know, let 9 billion go. There's another post, it will be going around, so you've probably seen it already, but there's another post talking about Robinhood being the one that we all focused on and knew about, but probably another 5 of them. So the boy from Bulgaria wasn't alone. I put a tweet up on it, and I'm sure I've shared. It's my style. If other people come up with stuff and I think it's interesting, I will share it. They get credit. So I'm pretty sure it's on my Twitter. Wolfie AMC GME. But it's always looked here that I haven't, in actual fact. I'm not, you know, I'm far from an expert. I'm no financial advisor. You do you, I do me. I did what I did because of my understanding, my knowledge, seeing things like 1987, seeing 2008, watching the mainstream media and Congress and the different political parties pretty much do nothing. I see them bottle it in 2012. So I do understand when people say, you know, the SEC is useless. Gary Gensler's been in long enough. He hasn't done anything, payment for order flow. He hasn't done anything regarding dark pool trading. He don't do anything about OTC. He ain't going after people that ain't got market maker exemption. So there's an awful lot that I understand. People can quite rightly have the opinion that it will never stop. They'll never deal with it. They'll never change it. Like I say, I come at it from a different angle, and I wrote something, and it was pretty much, why hasn't it squeezed yet? So the way I tend to look at this is it needs time. For me, it always needed time. There's lots of catalysts. Great guys wrote great DD, given out dates and then been vilified or otherwise within the community because they dared to do that. Well, chances are they should have been right. They had reasonable grounds. They had a good, fair argument. It was all transparent. They laid it out. It should have done. So if all the rules of the regulators were enforced, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing today. You wouldn't be sat here waiting like we all are today. So when I look at why hasn't it squeezed, it's because they're not ready. Them being the SEC, DTCC, FINRA, some banks, maybe some hedge funds, maybe the market itself. So what does them not being ready mean? So if you think it through, we cannot be correct and change doesn't happen. Because if we are correct about all the naked shorting, and for me there's no doubt naked shorting exists, and all the other shorts marked as longs and everything else that they do, and they receive these FINRA fines, etc. We can't be correct about that and things don't change. Why? Because the New York Stock Exchange, for me and for a lot of people, is the centre of the financial global web. And it attracts an awful lot of business, an awful lot of investors. There's 3,300 last count I looked at, 3,300 CEOs, CFOs, that's companies listed on the stock market. That's a shit ton of employees, pension funds invested, etc. So the market needs to be above board. The market needs to have integrity. Now we can shout and scream and we can get lip service from mainstream media and they don't pretend naked shorts is something new, etc. We all know that's not the case. I've flagged up many a Twitter about Wes Christian and others. Either go on the Twitter or just start off on a Google with Wes Christian, naked shorts, something of that nature, and you can just go down the rabbit hole yourself and you'll see there's a long, long list of this. So they need to get all their ducks lined up. The reason being, the day after the market, if we're correct and what we believe will happen within the market, the day after the market, it has to continue, or it doesn't. Now, for it to continue and for us to be correct about everything we've been saying, that needs sweeping changes, like instantaneous changes the day after. So leading up to it or before it, they're not going to come out and say, yes, there's naked shares in AMC, GME or whatever stock, because anybody who knows about that is then going to jump in. So they're not going to come out and encourage this play, but I don't see how they stop it anyway. At the moment, for me, time. If the market crashes and everything goes, you know, Burries of the world and Ray Dalio's of the world have been talking about crashes, and lots of others, you know, financial experts, work within the field, have the understandings, the education, knowledge, whatever. If the market crashes, that is a catalyst, a huge catalyst. All these other things with the DD, other catalysts, and they've all tightened the noose. Liquidity's disappearing out of the market, prices are starting to come down in certain stocks, blue chip stocks, tech stocks. We're looking at inflated prices in the housing market. You got Russia, you got China, you got Ukraine, you got the issues created by supply and demand, following on from COVID. 2019, there was a shit ton of money put in the New York Stock Exchange by the Fed, widely reported. So the market should have crashed in 2007. They held on to 2008. My belief has always been they were positioning, lining things up, getting insurance in place, limiting their own particular losses, passing on them wherever they can, as they said at Congress, in an email from a bank. You know, it's dog shit, sell it all. So this time around, the massive difference is me. 4 to 10 million apes that have educated ourselves, that have studied, that have learnt off of great people, Bighams, Boss Blunts, Ewa Tobbit from the Reddit days and the Reddit boys, Super Stonk. There's lots and lots of people. I can't name them, I'll be here all day. So it's widely believed that we understand how the market's now working, how it's operating, where the failures are, the FINRA fines, the SEC not collecting after payments, even the fines that they do present. Dave Lauer's even called it and said recently on a number of occasions, long time, there's problems within the market. Well, the difference between 2008 and now is us. Us. We shone the light. We continue to shine the light. We continue to be loud, and that's important. So let's say, argument case, in all the meme stocks, there's 10 million people, and they're talking to 10 people. You think for yourself, how many people have you spoken to about everything that's going on in the market? So you speak to 10 people. If there's 10 million in all these plays, and you spoke to 10 million, that's 100. How can they do what they did in 2008? It don't make sense. And it isn't just in the US. So the US is the #1 holder, meme stocks, followed closely by Canada, and then the UK, and then scattered around. But it's global. We did a thing in Boss Blunts one day, where we asked everyone to just put in the chat where you're from, and it was just literally everywhere. Everywhere there's somebody. There's people that are involved in this. So that's a huge difference between what happened in 2008 and what's happening now. Because after 2008 we had the films that come out, we had some books that come out. Now the Big Short concentrated mainly on market-backed securities credit default swaps. But the Wall Street conspiracy, which they pulled 5 minutes before it aired, also highlighted the naked short issue. Because that had been going on around 2000, it sort of really gained eyes, and it's been fought against, it's been argued against, battled against, court cases against since them days, Wes Christian and others, Lucy Commissar and Dr. Susan Trimbath, Dave Lau talks about it, lots of people. There's been companies that have been on the receiving end. So that's put an awful lot of pressure on their side. Because after 2008, they could explain it away with market-backed securities and credit default swaps and lots of jargon that is there in essence, just to confuse, just to make it too complicated or seem too complicated. It's often the case in a lot of areas, not just the market. So they sort of got away with it, but nothing changed. If anything, it's got worse. The leverage of the banks is worse. The hedge funds, the growth in them has been phenomenal. And unless you're doing something truly risky or truly out there on the edge, and if you lose, you go bankrupt. That's what happened to Plotkin. He was on the wrong end of a trade. Every trade has a winner and a loser. He ended up a loser. But for years, because he said it when he went in front of Congress when they had the hearings last year, that from the moment he opened his business, 2014, they were shorting GME the day they opened doors. He actually said that. They were his words. Go and have a look. So if you're on the riskiest end and you end up losing everything, that's why I call it an infinite squeeze, infinite losses. VW was described as an infinity squeeze. Well, that ran out of steam because the deal was done. This time around, it must scare them to death, because they dug a hole. They've been GME from 2014. AMC Adam Aarons on record talking in 2019 that he was being shorted on mainstream telly. He said that. So they were digging a hole, and then COVID turns up, and what's that going to do? No one's going out, everyone's in lockdown. They went in overkill. But they did it without shares, they did it without caring, they did it with arrogance, they did it with greed, they did it with a belief that because they've been able to get away with it, they've been up and down the food chain, they shorted Tesla, this, that and the other, all these other companies overstocked. Because of all this going on, they just got braver and more brazen and more arrogant. And it reminds me of The Big Short, where they talk in the film, and it is a film, but they talk in the film about how nobody read the paperwork. You know, Michael Burry said, I've read it, but that nobody else had. And they had 2 years warning. 2006 he placed his bets. And they had 2 years warning that the market was going to crash because of the housing market. They couldn't stop it. With everything they got, all the things that we keep talking about, all the rules, etc., all the market exempts, all the ways round things, all the access to the Fed and the printer and the government and Congress and all of it, they still couldn't stop it. They had 2 year warning. So this time round, they got a bigger issue. not only is these things happening, not only is there a history, court cases, fines, findings, investigations, companies been held to account for naked short selling and everything else that goes on, we showed up. And we stayed. And we're still staying. And nobody's leaving. I'll look at what I can in order to find that out. Nobody's leaving. If we own 90%, Adam Aaron come out and said 80 and then went to 90. That gives me strength. Because 90% of people understand what they're doing, why they've bought what they've bought. They're doing Buffett, they're holding. So this time around, I can't sweep it under the market if it's predominantly held by retail. And if in amongst that retail of 4 to 10 million people, they all know what's been going on. They've been watching everything. They've been learning everything. They've been trying to understand why things are the way they are. So again, I come at it from a different angle. I'm patient. I understand why, or why I believe it hasn't yet squeezed, because all the ducks haven't been lined up. So we heard the DOJ, and we heard that there was an investigation, and we heard through Patrick Byrne on an interview that it was a whistleblower that started this all off. We understand that RICO's being used now. These are things that weren't going on into 2008. And that's because of you, and because of me, and everybody else who holds. So if there's 100 million people that are out there and at any time can stand up and say, hang on a minute, that ain't what happened. Hang on a minute, that's a lie. Hang on a minute, that's to stop. Now the other side of that as well, and I've spoke recently about, if after 20 years everybody knows this is going on, are you seriously telling me that the really smart people, good people within the market, maybe CEOs, CFOs, have never formulated a plan that could fight against naked shorts and trap people? Fight against naked shorts and reverse the stranglehold on their own companies? I think that has to have happened. Somebody somewhere must have worked out how to have done it. You needed retail. So retail turned up last year. Saved AMC, GME and maybe some other companies. Carried on shining a light and learning. The SEC's now in a position where Congress is in a position where we've had congressmen and women. We've had previous SEC leaders. We've had previous court cases and West Christians and everything else that we can say, you can't sweep that under the rug. You can't pretend this didn't happen. You can't pretend we're not correct. Because if we are correct about everything, the day after the market does what it's going to do and the play's over, it's got to carry on. And the only way it can carry on is if they get them ducks in a line. If they can't come out the day after and say to everybody, there was issues within the market, once we were made aware of them, we had to formulate changes in order to be able to address it. And we had to do it in such a way that we didn't harm anyone any further than what it actually was. We had to hold people accountable, so we needed proper investigations. We needed to speak to them. We used RICO, we put pressure on that. We have changed rules recently. We've got these influx of rules that are changing from today. There will be no issuing of naked shares going forwards in the New York Stock Exchange. Basically, they're going to have to come out with everything that we was right about and have an answer the day after. And that takes a bit of time. So when I think to myself, oh, it's been a year now, it's been 14 months now, it's been 18 months now, makes me stronger in the belief that this is what's actually going on. These people, I think, have already dug their holes. There's no way out of it, and people ain't selling. They can't get out. The minute they start covering, we'll all know. The minute the play's over, we'll all know. And the minute it is over, they'll know that you've got 100 million people that now know. There might only be 4 to 10 million people in this play, but there'll be 40 to 100 million people that know what's gone on this time. So why is it not squeezed? I think there's people behind the scenes, and it would need people like the SEC and the DTCC and the government. And then you would need players within the market that might be able to keep trading within a channel to stop it. to slow it down until such a time that they will just play out, because they'll have all the answers, they'll have all the ducks in a row, they'll have all the things in place, they'll have all the rules and regulations and change. And maybe people like Wes Christian and Dr. Susan Trimbath and others, Dave Lowers, have put forward all these ideas of what's needed. There's a plan there to clean up the cancer in the market. There's been a plan there for years. They used it in 2008 to protect the banks so that you couldn't short banks after 2008. Because when the market crashes, these people don't care about anybody. They don't care about you or me or pensions or business. They don't care about states. They don't care about countries. They just care about making money. That's all it is. And the money they're making isn't for the likes of me and you. The money they're making, you've got to have significant amounts of money invested with them in the first place. So it's just the rich getting richer. Seems to me, if I was just about to run to be US president, I'd have this as my number one thing I'd be going for. Because even those who don't invest in the market get impacted. When a business closes or goes out of business, employees lose their jobs. They could be wrapped up in it and that side. When your 401k, which you give off, you know, pay somebody to put away or do whatever, with your pension, and when the mortgages go up. So a lot of this I've touched on. This is a bit of a rambling. I don't even know if I'll post this. But when do I think, why is it not squeezed? It isn't because they can stop it. It's simply that it's not the right time. And they need everything in place the day after it's happened. They need it to have support from the public, for the investors to continue and know and trust in the integrity of the market. And until they've got that in place, they will do all they can to fight against what's gone on. And then afterwards, unlike 2008, people will be held accountable. Will all banks go bankrupt? No. Will all hedge funds go out? No. But will people involved within them be held accountable? Well, if Rico does a good enough job, yeah. I honestly think they will this time. I think 2008, they got off by the skin of their teeth. That made them braver. Made them almost untouchable, or at least feel that way. And they carried on and on and on, got worse and worse and worse. Leverage was more and more and more. So I think it's just a matter of time. That's all we've got to wait for. It's just a matter of time for them to get all the ducks lined up so that the day after it happens, there's still a market. And that's why I personally believe it hasn't yet squeezed. So enjoy the rest of your day.